So, welcome back. And in just a minute, I'll be introducing our next panel discussion. And it's a great one. It's the topic that lies at the heart of everything we do, revenues. Where does the money come from? We're going to find out with an excellent panel interviewed by James Hewes, President and CEO of FIPP, who, of course, we saw earlier. So just a couple of reminders. If you didn't get there, there are competitions in the refreshment area, in the market area, and James will be doing the presentation of the prizes, travel-related prizes for those tomorrow afternoon. So if you need no other reason to stay till the very end, there's one right there. One more reminder, if you've had your phones on loud during the lunch break, now would be a good time to change that setting. And when we've done that, you'll know that this morning we talked about audience generation, specialist media. We talked about some of the biggest brands in the world and how we're globalizing the opportunities available to us, both from the perspective of finding new opportunities in regions we hadn't expected and exploiting opportunities that might be local to us on a global stage. But at the heart of all of those presentations, remember that first one, came that question, where is the money? Is there a market? But more crucially, is there money in the market? And there are no better people to discuss that topic than our next panel. So all that remains for me is to ask you please to welcome the President and CEO of FIPP back to the stage, James Hewes.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you all hear me? You all hear me okay? I hope you all had a very good lunch. I hope you're all having a productive Congress. Thank you very much. I realize that we've got a little bit of the poison chalice slot when you've all had your lunch and you're going to be nodding off, but we've got three panelists who are going to wake you up. So before I get into the audience topic, let me just introduce the people who are going to be here on stage with me. Very lucky in this session to have three CEOs, so you're in for a real treat. Let me start with Time Inc. UK. Please welcome Marcus Rich. And following on from Marcus, very quickly, we have from Centaur, Andria Vidler. And finally, making up the three, we have from Haymarket, Kevin Costello. Please welcome them all to the stage. So, Marcus, Andria, Kevin, welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and do this panel.
Thank you.
We're talking today about audience revenue and maximizing audience revenue. We've heard a lot today already about publishers making efforts to diversify their revenue, and I know from some of the research that we do into media news and media stories that this question of maximizing the revenue you get directly from your audience comes up time and time again. So if I may, I'm going to start with an individual question to each one of you, and then we'll go into some more kind of general questions that maybe all three of you can answer. And Marcus, let me start with you as you're right next to me. If somebody was unfamiliar with Time Inc. UK's business, I know that would sound impossible, but we've got a very international, diverse audience here. If they were unfamiliar with your business, what would you say to them about the role that audience revenue, direct audience revenue, plays in the success that you've had as a business?
So first of all, I would call Time Inc. a business about passions. So we fundamentally serve customers who are incredibly passionate about subjects beyond work, sometimes work. And I think over time, particularly with the rise of social media, I think people have become even more passionate about being a cyclist, being an equestrian, sailing a boat, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, the basis of the business is to have a deep understanding of those people and their passions, and then work out where we have permissions to extend our relationship with that customer. That's it in a nutshell. You know, whether that extends into events, whether it extends into e-commerce, et cetera. And then secondly, to kind of consider that audience from an advertiser's base, so beyond brand, which is when we collectively, let's say, add together people who read Decanter with people who read Country Life, who read Super Yacht World, you're reaching a very super AB audience, and you can aggregate that together to tell a story about an audience to an advertiser beyond just the brand.
Fantastic. Andria, you came to Centaur from a role at EMI, and the music business is obviously very focused on audience revenue. Were there any lessons you were able to bring from music into Centaur that's helped you to maximize audience revenue as a stream?
Thank you, James. Centaur is a very different business from EMI. For those of you that don't know, Centaur is now a B2B media and marketing services business. It helps clients, professionals, improve their business performance by enabling them with insight, information, and events. So we have transformed our business quite radically. I think what I took from EMI was that if you focus on what the customer need is, yes, you can extend revenues, but actually you can also transform, and Centaur is now, it was wholly reliant on advertising and sponsorship, and it is now, well, it'll head into 2018, about 80% are with revenues that are directly led from products and services to the client, to the audience.
To the audience, sure.
So,
fascinating. And Kevin, Haymarket's undergone a pretty big transformation in the last few years. Change of office, change of portfolio, a little bit of a change of direction, or a focusing of direction, let's say. How much of that thinking was driven, the thinking around what your strategy was going to be, was driven by the need to increase audience revenue?
Thanks, James. Well, I think actually the entire strategy was underpinned by a belief that we needed to diversify our income streams. I would describe us as a international specialist media and information company today, and we're a bit of both Marcus and Andria in the sense that we're almost equitably split globally, 50-50 B2B and consumer turnover, with about now 37% of that global turnover derived from advertising income. But we have been on a big transition over the last seven years. It's 5 years more recently, we launched our group growth plan and strategy to develop the business further and focus on growing out our digital income streams and our live events, which now represent 41% and 20% of our turnover globally.
Fantastic. And when you go on a journey like that and you go on a transformation, this is a question really to all three of you, and perhaps, Andrea, we could start with you. When you're thinking about trying to achieve that, what's the biggest barrier to getting there? What's the biggest barrier to achieving that goal?
how long have you got? I think if I talk about Centaur,
Yeah,
the whole organisation was focused on monetising the audience reach and selling eyeballs. And we had to change that orientation and to create content that was highly valued by its reader or its user or the data, so that it becomes vital enough that people are prepared to pay for it direct. And that takes a different path depending on the subject matter and on the subject matter, the audience, the marketplace, the competitiveness, and your brand standing. So it hasn't been the same journey for each brand, but it has been the same mission for each brand.
Okay, that's it. We'll come back to that question of different journeys for different brands. That's something I wanted to explore with you later because of the diverse nature of all of your businesses. But Kevin, does that resonate?
Yeah, it does. I think actually creating the plan and having the vision is arguably the easy bit. Transforming the culture is the really challenging, difficult part of the equation. After all, I guess like most people in this room, we're probably doing what we've always done brilliantly well, which is create great content. One of our founding fathers back in the 60s, Lindsay Masters, said it was editorial content and the quality of it that would ultimately always win. And I think that rings true today. So, we will serve our content out through whatever platform or channel our clients want it, as long as it's economically viable for us and makes commercial sense. So, obsessing on that diversification has resulted in us having to bring in a whole bunch of folks with a very different mixed set of skills. In fact, only last Monday I started the week hosting a an induction program. We had 25 new starters. And I would say 50% of the people in that room last Monday, the job titles and roles that they were fulfilling probably didn't exist as recently as 3 years ago within the organisation. And I think that speaks to the point that actually that war on talent, bringing in the capability to be able in a data analytical and insight-driven world is, for us all as media owners and as an industry, one of the single biggest challenges. Because these people are very rare, they're by and large pretty expensive, and they need to see media, companies like all of ours, as a real destination of choice, as an industry in which they can thrive, in an industry in which they can survive and build out a future and a career. So that's a really big fundamental that we've learned, I think. Well, it's not just about chasing the money, it's about actually finding the people with the right mixed set of skills and talent to be able to help you deliver it.
It's interesting, isn't it? We've had talent come up 2 or 3 times already this morning on different panels, and as you know, we were running the 3 Challenges program throughout the Congress. We've also been running it for a month or 2 before, and I would say that talent has come up in 80% of the answers so far as a key challenge for every business. Marcus, does that sound familiar? Is that something?
Yeah, no, I'd echo very much what Andrea and Kevin have said. It just reminded me, actually, sitting next to Andrea, the last time we were on stage together was 2014, and somebody asked me a question, what book would you recommend? And it was The Iceberg is Melting. Mm-hmm. And I said we were on a burning platform, and that caused a few ripples. But actually, I think as both Andrew and Kevin have said, the key is the vision, the faith, the belief, and then getting talent excited about the fact that they're working in an industry that actually is not a steady state and therefore at the forefront of change. And if you're excited about change and the fact that there's things we're going to do that we don't even know we're going to do in 6, 9, 12 months, 18 months' time, then it's an exciting place to be, but don't expect it to be a steady state. Because the where we will end up will be very different from where we started when me and Andrew were on stage in 2014.
Yeah.
I think, picking up on what Kevin said, if you understand what your customers want and you do move to a place where the teams recognise the content can be delivered in any format, they will also trial things. And that's what you need, because as Marcus says, you don't know where you're going to end up. It's not about moving into one revenue stream. It's not about moving from one format to another format. It's being able to have that ongoing conversation and dialogue with the community that you're talking to in multiple ways, as befits the conversation that's going on, and being able to be that flexible. You need teams that embrace the opportunity and flex with it.
So it's a question of company culture, you would say, having the right culture and putting in place the right culture rather than being prescriptive about saying we must pursue audience revenue, we must pursue this particular specific goal.
I would say it's a significant part of it.
100%. Cohesion, collaboration, creating a different environment, an environment that, if you like, more accurately reflects the type of organisations we've all become, unlike our perhaps old environments. So we broke all the walls down. I know these guys have done a similar thing, and we've created that a smarter, more flexible way of working, and all those buzzwords are utilised on a regular basis by us all, I know. So I guess you have to define it for yourself, and what does that mean? And we talk about it in the context of the outputs, not the amount of time that's logged. Only 70% of our folks now, only 30% of our folks globally. I'm not just talking the UK. We changed our culture and environment in the States and in Asia as well, have fixed working space. So it really did encourage the cross-fertilization and pollinization of teams, of ways of working, and of content production, workflows and process.
And how easy, I mean, Marcus, how easy is it to change a company's culture? I mean, is it something you can do overnight? Is it, I know we wish it could be, but what's the kind of checklist that you have to do to start that process?
I should thank Kevin, first of all, because it was his offices I went to first time before we moved to agile working and 10 people, 7 desks. But there was a lot of logic to it in the sense of that, people, it's not 9 till 5, the way we create content and the way the worker changes. But no, I think culture is an evolutionary thing, isn't it? And largely, as most people would say, culture is about what happened in the last 30 minutes, the behavior of somebody who we're talking to, etc. So therefore, it will evolve. I think the one thing I did want to mention was just that that whilst we're not sure necessarily where we're going to end up and why it's exciting to be in a changing environment. We do start with, in my view, 3 incredibly powerful differentiators. The first is brands. You know, the more I read about magazines and magazine brands, the more I'm convinced that they, in an area of fake news, become more and more important. The second is content, and I don't care what anyone says, I still think we create, and as Kevin mentioned, the very heart of our business is people who understand customers and content. And the third, which I'm sure will be a growing part of this conference, is real data. I don't mean cookie-based data, I don't mean algorithms, I mean contact with consumers and consumers telling you in their behavior what they're interested in and what they're doing.
So real insight.
Real insight, yeah. And those 3 foundations are the things that give us exactly what you've opened here with, the ability to grow audience revenues. Because otherwise, as we're starting to see, you know, as clients move away from agencies because they don't need their DSP, they can do it through their own places, that without those foundations, it's quite hard to build audience revenues.
And Andrea, the role of insight for you, I mean, you're obviously a big data-driven business. How important is insight as a driver for reader revenue?
Well, as we've transformed the magazines towards becoming business intelligence products, so they are digital products that have content and data that they are continually feeding the users and the community, the insight we get from that is everything they're using. So if we can see if there's a particular problem that people are really interested in by the amount of usage. So that's, I mean, we use it the whole time to develop the products, to work out what the hot topics are that we should be doing an event for, what the hot topics are that we might need to do a market report on. So we use that on an ongoing basis, both in terms of product development, but also in terms of, it might be information that people want to pay for specifically for a bespoke consultancy. So it's become part of everything we do.
So it's become both a product and an inspiration in itself.
Yeah.
Kevin, just thinking about when you go on a strategic journey, inspiration, where do you get inspiration from? Are there other organizations or brands that you look at where you go, that's the kind of model we want to follow?
Yeah, I think inspiration could be sourced from a number of places, right? And one of the things we did do actually was take an outside-in view and talk to a lot of other organizations when we set about launching our new strategy and plan, not just from within the media space, but from other sectors as well, to see if there were any parallels, any ways in which we could learn about their operating model. In particular, we were challenged with how we could wrestle down our global brand strategy. For example, a number of assets that are produced on a global stage, both under license or wholly owned, and getting people to work cohesively and collaboratively internationally is really, really hard. So, you know, we talked to Unilever and P&G and lots of other big sophisticated companies and didn't learn a whole hill of beans, actually. So we went out by ourselves and we tried and we failed and we started again and we kept on iterating, and it's inspiration, above and beyond anything, though, can come from, I think, the people within your own organisation. And back to that culture thing. Actually, I think culture is born out of people. And one of the big challenges for us when transforming the company was we wanted to take, if you like, the best from the past, the DNA, the heritage of a privately held media company that had a lot to celebrate over an illustrious history, whilst being fit for purpose in the future. So we knew we had to change, but we wanted to bring everybody with us. And not everybody could come with us on that journey, but by and large, we did bring most folks with us. So the inspiration came from within, whilst also, externally trying to seek some insights.
Andrea, inspiration, what organizations or brands inspire you in customer revenue generation, audience revenue generation?
I'm lucky enough to have worked in lots of different parts of the creative industry. So I've worked in consumer magazines and radio and TV and music, as was stated earlier. And I think there are lots of examples and there's lots of benefits. I believe that the closer you are to your customer, the more you can learn from your customer, the better. And therefore, I think you can get inspiration from customers. I think you have to give people the opportunity, back to culture, I think you have to give people the opportunity to trial things and to test things and let them fail and not worry about it if something doesn't go wrong. So, you know, trialing things is a really important part of our culture now. And seeing if things will fly. And some things have taken off very successfully, and some things, yeah, it's a miss, but you move on and you don't. So I think it's a mixture.
And Marcus, same question, sources of inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I think each of our markets is very unique and very different, and the customer is a far better source. I don't think there's a sort of classic silver bullet that says this is the best-in-class e-commerce. I think it works for each market. And I think a really good example was a couple of weeks ago, actually, was just a live example. We launched a product called Equo, which is a entry system if you're a show jumper. And if you're in horses, you pay at the end of the event, which is unusual because most things you pay before you use the venue rather than afterwards. And we went along and had a chat, and somebody caught me in the corner, actually slightly aggressive, actually, and I said, why don't you think this is a good system? You know, prepaying for your horse to do a round, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, because you have to come and see who's building the fences, who's the fence builder. Because based on who the fence builder is, you'll determine which horse you're going to put in. And I thought, that's the problem, isn't it? The only way you're really going to get great consumer insight and detail is to talk to the consumer. You can model it, you can do strategic modeling, but go and talk to the consumer.
Fantastic. Well, we're nearly out of time. Before we go, I just want to ask the key question that we're asking everybody this year, and ask each of you to articulate what the 3 key challenges are for your business over the next 2 years. Marcus, do you want to kick us off with that?
I thought you'd go to Kevin first.
No.
You say 3?
3.
All right, I'll go then.
You'll go on then if you're ready. Go.
I'd say people, and people. It's getting the talent, it's having the right capability, and it's ensuring that you've got people with the appropriate mixed set of skills. And collectively, I think there's a responsibility on all of us to still celebrate and make sure that everybody understands this is a fabulous industry to be a part of, so we can attract the smartest. There's so many clever people in our business now, Absolutely. Far cleverer than me, and we need to continue attracting the smartest people who understand how to exploit that audience intelligence capability that we're all building.
Fantastic. Andrea?
Yeah, I think the war on talent, that breed of person that Kevin referred to that is fantastically data analytical and yet also amazingly creative is quite rare. So I would say war on talent. I also think that the changes in tech are being updated so fast that requires a speed and an agility. And the businesses that we built 5 years ago, you would build in another way, you would build differently now. And that continual changing of tech stack is a challenge to keep on top of. So for all of our systems and processes, when you introduce a new revenue stream, you've got another complexity within an organization. So just trying to keep on top of all of that, I don't think is it should never be underestimated.
And Marcus?
People. No.
Good line.
It's a good line, though.
Thanks.
It's definitely people. I think faith, belief, and vision, which is linked to people and bringing people in. I think probably just some of us often suffer from trying to do too many things. Is probably focus, is less better things. And I think my last point, specifically with the magnetic hat on from an advertising perspective, I think we are in a unique window at this particular point, particularly with the launch of our new measurement system in PAMCO, to really push forward at this point when people are really starting to question. I mean, there was this piece, Procter & Gamble have stopped all digital advertising in the US and they haven't lost a single sale.
I saw that, yeah.
And we have this unique opportunity to show and return marketing properly to advertising placed in the right context will deliver a better result, particularly when it's with trusted brands. So that's my third point.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have any time for questions. We're a little bit behind. But please join me in thanking Kevin, Andrea, and Marcus. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much to James and the panel, and I'm sure they'll be around for a while if you do have any individual questions for them.